What's happening in France right now is eerily similar to what happened to President Trump on the campaign trail. At least that's according to some conservatives and populists here in America.
A judge sentenced French right-wing leader MarineLe-Pen to 4 years in prison and has banned her from running for office for 5 years. She and 8 other members of her National Rally Party, which is staunchly right-wing, were convicted of embezzling millions of euros that came from European Union funds. Le Pen was also fined 100,000 euros, which is about 108,000 US dollars.
Le Pen has denied any wrongdoing. She told the court before being sentenced, quote, "There are 11 million people who voted for the movement I represent, so tomorrow potentially millions and millions of French people would see themselves deprived of their candidate in the election."
Prosecutors say that some of the funding was used for things like Le Pen's bodyguard and personal assistant. 2 years of Le Pen's 4-year prison sentence are suspended, and Le Pen could potentially serve the other 2 under house arrest.
Here's President Trump commenting on the matter.
What happened in France today, Mr. President, MarineLe-Pen, the far-right leader, got convicted in court and is now banned from running for office for 5 years. Do you have a comment about that?
That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. I know all about it, and a lot of people thought she wasn't going to be convicted of anything, and I don't know if it means conviction, but she was banned for running for 5 years, and she's the leading candidate. That sounds like this country. That sounds very much like this country.
Does it? Well, Le Pen has condemned National Rally's anti-Semitic roots and has tried making the party more palatable to the public, and it seems to be working.
In fact, after current French President Emmanuel Macron called snap elections, 140 National Rally members made it into the lower house of Parliament. For context, in 2022, the party had 89 members in the lower house, and in 2024, the party became the biggest in the lower parliament. Le Pen is also a top presidential candidate for 2027, at least until this.
Le Pen took over the party in 2011, you may remember, from her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen. She has tried becoming the country's president 3 times, but has lost every race so far. Le Pen and her party's policies include curbing immigration and giving French-born citizens more state benefits and support.
Many on X jumped on the news. Journalist Glenn Greenwald, for instance, he wrote, "Romania banned Calin Georgescu after they invalidated his win. Brazil banned Bolsonaro as he leads Lula in the polls. France now banning Le Pen. Dems tried to ban Trump. The neoliberal establishment solution to being hated is to ban their opponents in the name of democracy."
Even Jacobin, a socialist magazine, doesn't think this is a smart move. They published an article titled, "Stopping Marine-Le-Pen from Running is a Bad Idea." The outlet continues, Marine-Le-Pen has been banned from running for office for 5 years. The sentence applies the law as written, but it turns her embezzlement conviction into a propaganda coup for her party.
Senior editor at National Review, Charles C.W. Cook, wrote on X, "I'm sure Le Pen was mixing party and parliamentary funds, but the thing is, A, so does everyone else in the EU Parliament. B, the elevation of this into embezzlement is absurd and cynical. And C, the sentence is clearly pretextual. It may well be overturned at appeal." And I think that is an important thing to note about this, is that she was not accused of personally profiting from these misplaced funds, rather using funds that were supposed to be used for people working explicitly for the European Parliament to actually, and then that was used for campaign staff. It sounds like an oopsie and a whoops, not a you can no longer run for president when you're the leading candidate. And this is going to empower, Democrats, liberals, progressives, the world over wonder why they're in retreat. And I think this is such a large part of the story. The presumption that they can't win, despite being pro-democracy, saying democracy is at stake because of the rise of right-wing leaders like Donald Trump or Marine Le Pen or whoever, despite saying democracy is at stake, they must resort to anti-democratic means to keep those forces at bay. It will not work forever. It's not persuasive to the American people. Right-wing figures, or if that we're calling them that, are succeeding because they're speaking to people's fears about immigration particularly and some other issues, and you have to if you disagree with those views, you have to beat them at the ballot box. I think this is a huge mistake, even if she is guilty of some technical financial violation, which I don't know specifically about the context of it. Charles C.W. Cook is someone I tend to trust, whose opinion aligns with mine. He says, yeah, she probably did it. Many others have done it. It was not for personal benefit, and it's bad for democracy if the leading candidate can't run because of a error such as this, in my view. What do you say?
Well, look, the bottom line, it was defrauding the public of millions of euros. And I think that when there's accountability, which is what they are trying to do here and what they did enact, we haven't seen that happen here in the United States when it comes to Trump. And I think that a lot of people are looking at this and like you're right, comparing it, because even with Signalgate, if we talk about Signalgate right now, they are trying to put it in the rearview mirror. And there's an admission of that. There's a blatant admission, look, there wasn't really any wrongdoing. We trust National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. And there's this idea of no accountability. And I think a lot of people are getting tired of that. And so they're looking at France, some folks in the United States, and saying, finally, stand up to something. You say you're about the people, but you're defrauding them, the public, of millions of euros. And you've done this over years, and it could have impacted, that amount of money could have impacted her ability to run, the success she had, ties with Russia, paying them back. There's a lot more threads to it than I think we're really going into.
But for a political leader, shouldn't the ultimate say over whether they have done something, they have defrauded the public, they have wronged the people? Don't we have an election to determine if that's how people are feel about it, right? I mean, even in the American context, while I very much disagreed with not all, but some of the efforts to go after Trump in a legal context.
Well, he has been 2 impeachment trials. I mean,
the impeachment trial was different. I mean, that was the impeachment trial was. They had the right to do that, and he was acquitted. The
acquitted.
Verdict of acquitted. They did not remove him from office, and for me, that was like, okay, that's that. Then he can run again, and he did, and he won. The people, knowing everything the Democratic Party, the media, and everyone else said about Trump, knowing full well what his conduct has been alleged to be, said we want Trump again. And I don't
lack
think,
of accountability on some of those.
Well, but
areas.
the accountability is the people saying we would rather have this person in charge. And if the people were prepared to make that decision about MarineLe-Pen in France, but now they're taking even more extraordinary steps and saying you cannot vote for her because she cannot be a candidate based on this.
They are saying that. That's true.
That seems wrong to me. It seems
philosophically,
morally wrong to me.
Well, they're saying that we want leaders. We want leaders who we can trust, and based on your actions. Well, that's what I mean. That's what the court is saying. I mean, in this decision, that we don't trust you. You have lost any trust. And I'm not in France, right?
Yeah.
So we're not there to say exactly what's happening, the pulse of the people on the ground. But I think those who are watching here are saying, well, look, there's some accountability that's being held for leaders, and we haven't seen that as much here in America.
Yeah, but is there accountability for the failed policies of the Macron government? And you're right. I'm not a French citizen either. I wouldn't even say Macron is like particularly my least favorite world leader by any stretch of the imagination. Although I just deeply despise the European bureaucrats who harass American tech companies, and try to censor speech all over the place. But I think many people in Europe, in France, feel like there should be accountability for failed policies that have contributed to violence and social unrest in terms of waves of migrants. If you look at public polling, there's tremendous amount of frustration about that. Where's the accountability for those policies, right? But they're not saying, and thus Macron should be ineligible to run for re-election again, right? It's going to be just determined in a democratic fashion. But ironically, that they're the pro-democracy faction, according to the public portrayal. Right. The one saying you can't vote for the other person. That's the pro-democracy faction.
Well, I think if we look at what's even happening in Wisconsin right now, which we'll get into in a little bit, we're seeing that there's this attempt, Elon Musk on the ground, giving out $1 million, causing all this media outcry for that. And then there's this influence in trying to make sure that it's going to impact the House and redistricting and all of those things that go into play. And people are looking at, how much of our leaders are actually doing the right thing and having integrity? And I'm not saying that everything she did was poor. I'm not saying that everything she did was poor. But I am saying that I think that just looking at it, it's saying, can we have integrity back? Can we have trust back?
I want that, but do you think those are similarly delegitimizing? Yes, Elon is spending tons and tons of money. He is involved. He is, I guess,
buying influence. Buying
is
influence.
I think that's
Russia.
I think that's playing the game, and both sides are doing it. I think cheating at the game is using the legal system to disqualify the other person. personally. That's how I feel.
And there's been allegations of that here in the U.S. But look, we'll get into that later.
All right,
I know
we've got
a lot. And
more
we're being
to
told
discuss.
to wrap, so we got to go. Okay.
More to discuss. Coming up, a couple of crucial races for both Republicans and Democrats today, including this Wisconsin race. We will discuss that next. Stay tuned.